Chapter 3. A Magician out of Egypt. It is a singular fact, and perhaps a significant one, that before I can begin to try my luck in this strange quest, Fortune herself comes in quest of me. I have not even taken the tourist privilege of exploring the show places of Bombay. All I know of the city can be comfortably written down on a postcard. My trunks, save one, remain in a sedate, unpacked condition. My sole activity consists in an attempt to familiarize myself with my surroundings in the Hotel Majestic, which a shipboard acquaintance had described as one of the most comfortable hotels in the city. It is through this activity, then, that I make a startling discovery. For, staying as a fellow guest of the hotel, I find a member of the magician's fraternity, a weaver of strange spells, in short, a wonder worker in the flesh. Not that he's one of those juggling fellows, mind you, who make their own and theatre's fortunes by bewildering jaded audiences. He is not some clever individual attempting to emulate the feats of Mascaline and Devon in a less prosaic environment than that of Regent Street. No, this man belongs to the line of medieval sorcerers. He engages daily in commerce with mysterious beings invisible to normal human eyes, but plain enough to his own. Such, at least, is the peculiar reputation which he has created. The hotel staff regard him with fearful looks and speak of him with bated breath. Whenever he passes by, the other guests instinctively break off conversation and a puzzled, questioning look comes into their eyes. He makes no overtures to them and usually insists on dining alone. What makes him more intriguing in our eyes is that he bears neither European nor Indian nationality. He is a traveller from the country of the Nile, in very sooth a magician out of Egypt. It is not easy for me to reconcile the appearance of Mahmud Bey with the sinister powers with which he has been credited. Instead of the stern visage and lean body which I look for, I observe a good-looking, smiling face, a well-built figure with massive shoulders and the quick walk of a man of action. Instead of the white robe or voluminous cloak, he is sprucely dressed in well-fitting modern clothes. He looks like a handsome Frenchman, such as one might see any evening in the better restaurants of Paris. I ruminate upon the matter for the rest of the day. Next morning, I wake up with a clear-cut decision. Mahmud Bey must be forthwith interviewed. I shall get his story, as my fellow scribes of the press might say. I write a few lines, expressive of my desire, on the back of a visiting card, and then, in the right-hand corner, I draw in tiny characters a certain symbol, which will indicate that I am not unfamiliar with the traditional side of his mysterious art, and which I hope may help me to obtain an interview. I slip the card into the hand of a soft-footed servant, add a silver rupee, and send him up to the magician's room. 5 minutes later, the response arrives. Mahmud Bey will see you at once, sir. He is just about to take breakfast and invites you to join him. This first success encourages me. The servant leads the way upstairs, and I find Mahmud Bey seated at the table, whereupon there is tea and toast and jam. The Egyptian does not rise to greet me. Instead, he points to a chair opposite him and says in a firm, resonant voice, "Please be seated. Excuse me, but I never shake hands." He wears a loose grey dressing gown. There is a leonine mane of brown hair on his head. A curling lock strays over his forehead. His teeth flash white in a charming smile as he asks, "You will share my breakfast, eh?" I thank him. Over the cups, I inform him of the awe-inspired reputation which belongs to him in the hotel, and of the prolonged meditation in which I have indulged before having the temerity to approach him. He laughs heartily, and half raises a hand into the air as a gesture of helplessness, but says nothing. After a pause, he asks, "Are you representing any paper?" "No. I have come to India on a private mission, to study some out-of-the-way things, and possibly make a few notes for literary work." "Will you stay here long?" "That depends on circumstances. I have fixed no period," I answer, with a queer feeling that the affair is becoming a case of the interviewer interviewed. But his next words reassure me. "I, too, am here on an extended visit. Possibly 1 year, possibly 2 years. After that, I am off to the far east. I would like to see the world and then return home to Egypt, if Allah permits." The servant enters and clears the table after we have finished. I feel that it is time to plunge into deeper water. "Is it true that you possess these magical powers?" I question him pointedly. Calmly and confidently he says, "Yes. Allah, the All-Powerful, has granted me such powers." I hesitate. His dark grey eyes gaze fixedly at me. "Would you like me to demonstrate them, I believe?" he asks suddenly. He has correctly gauged my desire. I nod assent. "Very well. Have you a pencil and some paper?" I hastily feel in a pocket for my notebook, tear out a page, and then produce a pencil. "Good," he remarks. "Now please write some question on the paper." With that, he withdraws and sits at a small table in the window recess. He half turns his back upon me and looks down into the street below. Several feet of space now separate us. "What kind of question?" I query. "Anything you wish," he replies promptly. My brain plays with a few thoughts. Finally, I write down a brief question. It is, "Where did I live 4 years ago?" "Now fold the paper repeatedly until it forms a tiny square," he instructs me. "Let it be the smallest possible fold." I obey him. Thereupon he draws his chair back to my table and faces me once again. "Please clench the piece of paper together with the pencil in the palm of your right hand." I hold the articles tightly clutched. The Egyptian closes his eyes. He appears to fall into a profound concentration. Then the heavy lids open once more. The grey eyes look steadily at me, and he quietly says, "The question which you asked, was it not, where did I live 4 years ago?" "You are correct," I reply, astonished. This is a case of mind reading extraordinary. "Now please unfold the piece of paper in your hand." His voice breaks in. I place the tiny scrap upon the surface of the table and slowly open out its many folds until the paper lies flat, extended to its original size. "Examine it," commands the other man. I do so and make a surprising discovery. For some unseen hand has written in pencil the name of the town where I lived 4 years ago. The answer has been placed immediately beneath the question written. Mahmoud Bey smiles triumphantly. "There is the answer. Is it correct?" he demands. I give a wondering assent, for I am baffled. The feat hardly seems credible. As a test, I ask him to repeat it. He readily agrees and moves away to the window while I write down a further question. Thus, he avoids any possible accusation of being close enough to read my writing. Besides, I watch him carefully and note that his eyes are set upon the colorful scene in the street below. Once again, I fold the paper and clutch it tightly against the pencil which is in my hand. He returns to the table and plunges again into close concentration, his eyes fast shut. Then come the words. Your second question. What journal did I edit 2 years ago? He has given my query quite accurately. Thought reading again, I presume. Once more he requests me to unfold the tiny scrap in my hand. I place it flat on the table and it reveals to my astounded gaze the name of the journal in question, clumsily written in pencil. Conjuring? I dismissed the suggestion as absurd. The paper and pencil were supplied from my own pockets. The questions were unpremeditated, while Mahmood Bey has scrupulously put several feet between us at each writing. Moreover, the entire feat has been performed in the morning daylight. Hypnotism? I have studied the subject and I know well when any attempt at undue influence is being made. I know equally how to guard against it. And the mysteriously added words still remain on the paper. The scrap of paper remained in my possession for several months and the writing did not disappear during the whole of that time. I showed it to 2 or 3 persons who readily identified the added answers. It is therefore evident that the experience had not been a hallucination. I am baffled again. For a third time, I request the Egyptian to repeat the experiment and he agrees to a final test. From this, too, he emerges completely successful. The facts cannot be gainsaid. He has read my mind, as I believe. He has somehow, by inexplicable magic, caused certain words to be written by an invisible hand upon a piece of paper which I clutch tightly in my hand. And finally those words form correct replies to my question. What is the strange process he uses? As I ponder over the matter, I feel the presence of uncanny forces. To the normal mind, the thing is incredible. It is something alien and apart from sane existence. My heart almost stands still with a sense of eeriness. Have you men in England who can do this? He asks half boastfully. I am compelled to admit that I know of none who can perform the feat under similar test conditions, though several professional conjurers can doubtless perform it, if allowed to use their own paraphernalia. Would you care to explain your methods? I inquire, weakly, fearing that in asking him to reveal his secrets I am asking for the moon. He shrugs his broad shoulders. I have been offered large sums of money to give my secrets away, but I do not intend to do so yet. You are aware that I am not entirely ignorant of the psychic side of things, I venture. Assuredly, if I ever come to Europe, which is quite possible, you may be able to render certain services to me. In that case, I promise to train you in my method so that you could do the same things if you wish. How long does the training last? That would differ with different persons. If you worked hard and gave the whole of your time to it, 3 months would be enough to get an understanding of the methods. But after that, years of practice may be required. Can you not explain the broad basis of your feats, the theoretical side alone, without explaining your secrets? I persist. Mahmood Bey muses over my query for a while. Yes, I am willing to do that for you, he answers softly. I feel for my shorthand book, draw it out of a pocket and poise the pencil in readiness to take notes. No, please, not this morning, he protests, smiling. I am busy. You must excuse me now. come here tomorrow at 1 hour before noon and we shall continue our talk. Precisely at the appointed time, I sit again in Mahmood Bey's room. He pushes a box of Egyptian cigarettes over the table towards me. I pick one out and, as he proffers the light, he remarks, "These come from my native country. They are good." We lean back in our chairs, puffing a few preliminary whiffs. The smoke is fragrant, aromatic. Certainly these cigarettes are excellent indeed. So, I must now describe my theories, as your English friends would call them. To me, they are certainties. Mahmood Bey laughs good-naturedly. Perhaps you will be surprised to hear that I am a man expert in scientific agriculture and that I hold diplomas in the subject. He adds, irrelevantly. I begin to scribble a note. That does not seem to fit in with my, shall we say, interest in magic, I know. He continues. I look up at him and notice a smile hovering around his lips. He gazes back at me. There is a good story in this man, I reflect. But you are a journalist. Probably you would like to know how I became a magician, eh? He queries. I express an eager assent. Good. I was born in an interior province, but brought up in Cairo. Let me tell you that I was just a normal boy with the usual interests which schoolboys possess. I was very keen on making agriculture my profession, so I attended the Government Agricultural College for that purpose. I worked hard at my studies and went on with them most enthusiastically. One day an old man took an apartment in the house where I lived. He was a Jew, with bushy eyebrows and long grey beard, and his face was always grave and serious. He seemed to be living in the past century, for he wore very old-fashioned clothes. His manner was so reserved that the other inhabitants of the house were kept at a distance. Strangely enough, instead of having the same effect upon me, this mysterious reserve piqued my interest. Being young, self-assertive, and utterly without a trace of shyness, I persistently strove to make his acquaintance. At first he rebuffed me, but that only added fuel to the fire of my curiosity. Eventually he gave way to my constant attempts to engage him in conversation. He opened his door to me and permitted me to enter his life. Thus, I came to learn that he spent much of his time in strange studies and weird practices. In short, he confessed to me that he was making researches into the supernatural side of things. Imagine it. Hitherto my life had run along the even channel of youthful study and healthy sport. Now I was forced abruptly face to face with a totally different kind of existence. And it appealed to me. The thought of the supernatural did not frighten me, as no doubt it would have done other boys. Really, it thrilled me because I saw the possibilities of great adventures opening up through it. I begged the old Jew to teach me something about that subject, and he yielded to my desire. In this way, I was brought into a new circle of interests and friends. The Jew took me with him to a society in Cairo, which conducted practical investigations into magic, spiritualism, theosophy, and the occult. He often delivered lectures to them. The group was composed of society people, learned savants, government officials, and other persons of good standing. Although I had only just reached manhood, I was permitted to accompany the old man to every meeting of the society. On each occasion I listened eagerly. My ears drank in every word of the talk around me. My eyes watched with keen fascination the strange experiments which were so often made. Of course, it was inevitable that my technical studies in agriculture were neglected so that more time could be given to the researches into supernatural matters. However, I had a natural genius for the former studies and scraped through my diploma examinations without difficulty. I studied the musty old books which the Jew lent me and practiced the magical rituals and other exercises which he taught me. I made such quick progress that I began to discover things which he himself did not know. At length, I became acknowledged as an expert in these arts. I delivered lectures and gave demonstrations to the Cairo Society until its members appointed me as its president. For 12 years, I remained its leader. Then I resigned because I wanted to leave Egypt and travel to certain countries and incidentally to acquire a fortune. Mahmoud Bey stopped speaking. His carefully manicured fingers, which I have not failed to observe, flicked the ash from his cigarette. A difficult task. He smiles. For me it will be easy. I need only a few clients among the super-rich who wish to make use of my magical powers. Although I am known to certain wealthy Parsis and rich Hindus, they come here to consult me about their problems or troubles, or they wish to discover certain things which elude them, or they want information which is only to be procured by occult means. I charge them high fees, naturally. 100 rupees is my minimum. Frankly, I want to make a lot of money and then throw the whole thing up and retire to some quiet interior province in Egypt. I will buy a large orange grove plantation and take up my agricultural work once again. Did you come here direct from Egypt? No. I spent some time in Syria and Palestine after leaving Cairo. The Syrian police officers heard of my powers and occasionally asked me to help them. Whenever they were puzzled by some crime, they used my services as a last resource. Almost always I succeeded in finding the criminal for them. How were you able to do that? The inner secrets of the crimes were revealed to me by my attendant spirits, who created a vision of the scenes before my eyes. Mahmoud Bey relapses for a minute into reminiscent thoughts. I wait patiently for his next words. Yes, I suppose you could call me a practicing spiritualist of a sort, since I do invoke the aid of spirits, he goes on. But I am also what you call a magician in the real sense, not a conjurer, as well as a thought reader. I do not claim to be anything more than this. His claim is sufficiently startling to require no further additions. Please tell me something about your invisible employees, I ask him. The spirits? Well, it took me 3 years of difficult practice to get my present control of them. You see, in the other world which exists outside our material senses, there are bad as well as good spirits. I try to use good spirits only. Some of them are human beings who have passed through what the world calls death. But most of my attendants are jinns. That is, native inhabitants of the spirit world who have never possessed a human body. Some of them are just like animals. Others are as shrewd as men. There are also evil jinns. We call them jinns in Egypt, and I do not know any suitable English word for them, who are used by low sorcerers, especially by the African witch doctors. I refuse to have anything to do with them. They are dangerous servants and will sometimes turn treacherously on the man who is using them and kill them. Who are these human spirits you employ? I can tell you that one of them is my own brother. He died some years ago. But remember, I am not a spiritualist medium, for no spirit enters my body or is allowed to control me in any way. My brother communicates with me by impressing upon my mind whatever thought he wishes, or by bringing a picture vision before my mind's eye. That is how I knew the questions you wrote down yesterday. And the jinns? I have as many as 30 at my command. Even after obtaining mastery over them, I had to train them how to do my bidding, just as you train children to dance. I have to know the name of each, because you cannot bring or use them without knowing their names. Some of these names I learned from the musty old books which the Jew lent me. Mahmud Bey pushes the cigarette box towards me again, and then continues. I have given each spirit a particular duty. Each one is trained to do a separate work. Thus the chins who produced the pencil-written words on your piece of paper yesterday would be unable to help me discover the nature of your questions. How do you get into contact with these spirits? Is my next query. I can call them to me very quickly, merely by concentrating in thought upon them. But in practice, I usually write down in Arabic the name of the spirit required. That is sufficient to bring it to me almost at once. The Egyptian looks at his watch. He rises and says, "And now, my friend, I regret to say that I cannot give you any further explanation of my methods. Perhaps you will now understand why I must keep them secret. We may meet again one day, if Allah wills. Goodbye." He flashes his teeth in a smile as he bows. The interview is at an end. Night in Bombay. I go to bed late, but not to sleep. The heavy air suffocates me. It seems to contain no oxygen, and its heat is intolerable. The whirring blades of an electric fan which hangs from the ceiling bring little relief, certainly not enough to induce my weary eyes to close. I find that the simple act of breathing is a distinct labor. The air is hot enough to hurt my inexperienced lungs with every dilation. My wretched body becomes flaccid and drips a continuous stream of perspiration which my pyjamas soak up. Worse, my oppressed brain finds no rest. The devil of insomnia enters my life this night and is destined to haunt me until the day when my shoes tread Indian soil for the last time. I have begun to pay the inevitable price of acclimatization to the tropical world. A mosquito net hangs around my bed like a white shroud. Through a tall window which opens on the veranda balcony, the moonlight comes streaming and casts eerie shadows on the pale ceiling. Musing over the morning's talk with Mahmud Bey and the astounding phenomena of the previous day, I seek for some explanation other than that he has given me, but can find none. If those 30 or more mysterious servitors of his really exist, then one is back in the medieval period, when, assuming legend does not always lie, magicians flourished in every city of Europe, though often hindered in their dark work by church and state. The more I seek for an explanation, the more I retreat baffled. Why had Mahmud Bey instructed me to hold a pencil simultaneously with the piece of paper? Did his alleged spirits draw some constituent atoms from the lead to enable them to write the answers? I cast about in memory for instances of similar feats. Does not the famous Venetian voyager Marco Polo relate somewhere in his book of travel how he came across certain magicians in China, Tartary, and Tibet, and how they were able to perform pencil writing without contact? And did not those wizards inform him that this weird act was known and practiced among their people since centuries before? I remember too that Helena Petrovna Blavatsky, the enigmatic Russian lady who founded the Theosophical Society, produced somewhat parallel phenomena 50 years ago. Certain favored members of her society received somewhat lengthy messages through her agency. They propounded philosophical questions, and the replies were scrawled, precipitated, she called it, upon the actual letter paper bearing the questions. It is curious that Madame Blavatsky claimed intimate acquaintance with both Tartary and Tibet, the very lands where Marco Polo met with the same phenomena. Yet, Madame Blavatsky did not claim to control any mysterious spirits, as Mahmud Bey had done. Her assertion was that the mysterious writings emanated from her Tibetan masters, who lurked in the flesh and lurked unseen as the inspirers of her society. Apparently, they were better hands at the feat than the Egyptian, for they had produced such writings hundreds of miles away from Tibet. There had been much dispute at the time whether the Russian lady's phenomena were really genuine and whether her Tibetan teachers really existed. But that is not my concern, for that brilliant woman has long since gone to the other world in which she seemed so much at home while yet here. I know my own experience and what I have witnessed with my own eyes. I must accept the genuineness of the performance, even if I reserve its explanation. Yet, Mahmud Bey is a magician, a 20th century wizard. My discovery of him so soon after landing on Indian earth seems to be a herald, apt and prophetic, of even stranger discoveries yet. Metaphorically, I have cut the first notch in my stick of Indian experience. Actually, I have put down the first note on the virgin white sheets of my notebook. End. Chapter 3. A Search in Secret India.